Mr. Frost for 5 minutes for his questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad that we're starting this committee talking about waste, fraud, and abuse and how we can make government work better for the people. Mr. Chairman, the previous comments, I agree with the initial comment that we need to take the politics out of the discussion, take the politics out of this and the posturing and the hyperbole, so that way we can work together, again, to modernize our government and make it work for the people. And I hope this committee will continue to look into other financial abuses, such as wage theft and corporate welfare, as we continue over the next 2 years. Assistant Director Smith, we've heard a lot of hyperbole and political posturing from this committee today. I think the way that we communicate and talk about an issue is extremely important in finding the solution. We've heard things like the greatest theft in our country's history. I'm curious, from the point of view from law enforcement, does that type of hyperbole when talking about crime work to exacerbate the issue?
Sir, thank you for the question. I think it's inconsequential to the bad guys as a law enforcement professional. Bad actors exploit situations no matter what the political climate is. So we focus on investigating violations of identity theft fraud, wire fraud, and bank fraud.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Mr. Dodaro, is it Dodaro, right? Yeah, okay. All the GAO's recommendations include increasing the capacity and resources of the federal government to help deal with the waste, fraud, and abuse. Oversight isn't just talking about an issue, we have to solve it. And in the spirit of solving it, can real improvements be made without additional resources and money to the government, to these departments and agencies, so that way they are set up for success to deal with the issues?
Yeah. Some of them can be made without additional resources. Some need additional resources, such as the IG community, to continue their investigations on fraud, but also to set up this analytics center. It's really a mixture of both.
Do you think that the amount of resources that were allocated during the previous administration was sufficient enough for what we were dealing with?
I think there was adequate money given. I think it was just a choice of decisions that were made in some cases. I talked about limitations in the legislation itself. The agencies made decisions that I think could have been different decisions. They were given money to help administer the programs. I think there could have been a little bit more flexibility that was given. I know Treasury's run into some problems recently because they couldn't redistribute the money among some of the programs, particularly new programs, because until you start administering them, you don't know whether it's an adequate allocation or not. Congress fixed that with the latest Consolidation Appropriation Act. But I think by and large, the resources were there. It was just some decisions that were unfortunate.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Horowitz, on this committee, I've heard a lot of demonizing of Washington bureaucrats, and bureaucrats are often scapegoated. And to be clear, when we talk about bureaucrats, we're talking mainly about working class people who have decided to serve their country by working to power our government. Do you believe that one of the central issues here is that agencies and departments were not set up for success? And I'm thinking specifically about the previous administration. We got into this issue. Do you believe they were set up for success to be able to dole out the amount of money that was being given out?
I think the problem at the outset of the pandemic was, as the Comptroller General has mentioned, the lack of preparedness. Now, understanding this was a 100-year event with the pandemic, but we have emergencies all the time. We have earthquakes, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, other disaster relief. It happens regularly, not at the scale, perhaps, as this did, but we don't take the steps after an event like this or smaller emergency events to fix what's needed. That was the problem. Just to give you a sense of it, the SBA, Small Business Administration, which administered the PPP and EIDL program, the largest amount of money they had ever given out in a loan program prior to the pandemic was $30 billion. They were giving out $50 billion in a day when the pandemic hit. So when you say, were they ready for success? Well, if you go to an agency that has experience giving out $30 billion over a year, and you say, here's $800 billion, get the money out the door, which was the initial PPP program, That's a recipe for a very challenging situation for no matter who's running the agency.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Horowitz. Yeah, and I think the point here is I agree. We need to prepare for the future here, whether it's a pandemic or anything else. And I'm looking forward to working with my Republican colleagues on ensuring that we give the adequate resources and know-how to our agencies and departments so when this happens again, we're prepared for it. Thank you. I yield back.